Awesome.
Um, and we're recording this for our friends at Ridgeland High, Germantown High, and Rosa Scott. And I know, and I appreciate you taking time for us today. You're one of the busiest people I know, but we've talking about the hospitality tourism career cluster and my experience in the restaurant industry. And they hear me talk about it a lot because it is such a transferable skill and such a great field to be in. But you've got, I'll let you know how many years in it and all the places you worked, and then we got some questions for you. But why don't you tell us first of all what it is you do and how you got into the restaurant industry?
Sure. So, first of all, thanks for having me. And I want to say hi to everybody at Velma Jackson and in the classroom. It's important for you to be able to ask questions of people that are in a field that you may or may not want to get into. So, I appreciate you giving me time to talk to you about that. I am currently the director of operations at Burgers, Blues, and Barbecue. Um, we have two stores. We've opened both of those stores in the last 2 years. I mean, last year. We opened one in Brandon in December, and we opened in Madison in June. Um, we did close the one in Ridgeland in order to open these two and kind of rebrand ourselves. So I also was the director of operate, not the director, the area director at Georgia Blue. Um, I opened Drago's restaurant in the Hilton on County Line. I opened Lou's Full Serve, which is in Fondren. Well, actually, Belhaven.
Yep.
Yeah, opened Biaggi's, which is in the Renaissance. Um, and I opened going way back Corky's Ribs and Barbecue in Clinton,
Wow.
off of Spring Ridge Road. That's actually my first restaurant job in Mississippi. I am from originally from New Orleans, which is where my passion for food and service comes from. Also from my mom. My mom was in the restaurant business when I was a child, and she brought me into it, and I fell in love with it. And actually, myself, uh, I am one of the few people that actually went to school to be in the restaurant business. At the time I was going to college, there were only a few colleges in the country that had a hotel, restaurant, and tourism degree. And the University of New Orleans is one of them. And that's where I went to school and got my degree in hotel, restaurant, and tourism. Um, and through college, I've worked with at several restaurants um, in New Orleans and managed Ralph and Cacoo's and Steak and Ale and a Chili's. So been doing this for a long time.
Now, one thing that we had just talked about before you came on was about in a restaurant, and I just use the example about the business side of a restaurant, because obviously with being teenagers, all they see is the stuff comes out on the plate, it's good, it costs too much, whatever. And we talked about how a restaurant has a lot of business that goes on behind the scenes before anybody ever walks in the door. And I've seen a little bit of that, but can you talk a little bit about what all goes on the business side of the restaurant industry?
Well, there's a ton, which is why it's difficult to be successful. A lot of people retire and want to open up a restaurant because it's cool, or they think that they want to open up a restaurant because it's a easy way to make money. Because, like you said, you've seen it from the outside looking in. But I would say a restaurant has you have to have more business sense in a restaurant than almost any other business that exists, because you are dealing with not only the business economy from within your restaurant, but you're dealing with the business side of it, which is particularly right now in this country with getting food to the restaurant before it could even be prepared. So you're dealing with vendors, you're dealing with people who provide beef or chicken, Uh, Honestly, the hardest thing right now is getting paper supplies because, all of those items are being made in China or internationally and they get shipped. And right now, that's more difficult than ever. So prices fluctuate. Um, your ability to get those items in inventory fluctuate. So you're dealing with that. Then you're dealing with, basic energy costs, dealing with the high price of energy, whether it's electricity, gas, water. You have to monitor those utilities. Then you're dealing with labor. And right now, labor is hard to get people to work. So then you're paying people a little bit more to work. And then that affects your profit and your bottom line. So, and then marketing, you wouldn't think about that, but you do have some cost in marketing to get your name out. We're presently trying to get more people aware that we're in Madison and that we serve breakfast. It's a big opportunity for us because we're, struggling with a marketing budget that allows us to do that.
Yeah, and I had that breakfast the other day, and it is banging for anybody, especially our Madison Central friends over there. Right down the street, and that is some good breakfast. That create your own omelet's pretty impressive. Now, let's say somebody 18 years old, just graduated from high school, really isn't real sure about the college route. What are some ways that they can move up within the restaurant industry where you really wouldn't need a whole lot of postgraduate education, if any?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I think in my career, I have promoted more people to management internally than externally. So what that means is if you're really, school's not your thing and you really love the restaurant business, and look, if you're going to be a manager in the restaurant business, you better love it because it is challenging every day. I love it. That's why I continue to do it at my age. And I still get a lot of satisfaction out of, coaching people. I know you're a coach and I know you're a ref, and I can tell you, you've been in many of my pre-shifts. Everything I do in the restaurant business is team oriented, and it's almost like my value to the team is being able to coach people and make teams better. And how you do that is you do promote people from within that show aggressiveness, they show leadership, reliability, punctuality, responsibility. So if you want to get into management in the restaurant business, first of all, go cook at a restaurant. Come to Burgers and Blues. We'll get you rolling. But you need to cook. You need to do some front of the house. You need to make sure that you love it before you commit to management. And then you need to be the best. You don't promote somebody who's average. It doesn't happen. So if you want to move up, most people can move up and make a good living, $40,000, $50,000 a year as it is today. Who knows what it'll be in 3 to 5 years from now. But that's just a start. And I could quell some rumors, and it does depend on who you go work for. And Greg can tell you, who you work for does matter. But the days of working 70, 80 hours in the restaurant business, those are long gone. People have realized years and years ago that if you want to keep managers, we have to give them quality of life. And personally, being, a devout Catholic and caring about people and caring about my managers and my employees, we strive to give everybody quality of life. And, so managers, if you're working, 50, 55 hours a week, that's about average for us. If you're over 60, something's wrong. So back in the day, that was the norm. So the industry has become more people friendly.
Yeah, and for some of the people that are watching or watching later that may not you used a couple restaurant terms or they may not know. Can you talk about the difference between back of the house in a restaurant, in front of the house, because they are two completely different set of skills that they can learn to move up in. So, what all goes into both of those areas in a restaurant?
Right. So back of the house, you're really starting, entry level, probably at dish, working the dishwasher, um, or being prep where you're preparing food. Then you move up and you're basically cooking at that point where you're either frying food, grilling food on the grill, saute, which is basically cooking pastas, pizzas, salads, desserts. So those are all cook positions. And then once you master those, then you start getting where you want to become either a shift leader or a captain, and you get basically paid an hourly wage to run a shift. And then you prove yourself to that point, and then you become eligible for promotion. In the front of the house, usually entry level is a busser where you bus tables or you run food. So you run food ready to the tables. Cashier, server where you're serving tables, and then bartender. Um, Once you master those, you become a shift leader and you start doing closing paperwork and checking people out and prove that you can do that well. And then you become eligible for promotion.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, all these promotions that he's talking about, none of these would really have a formal education requirement, even though it would be useful. We do have several students that really are interested in going to college, but it's like you said, there's a lot of in demand, get hired right now jobs in the restaurant industry. And the ones that are here for me talk about, I spent 11 years in the restaurant industry working at different restaurants, and I was always able to make really good money. However, the downside of the industry is that the busiest times, I hit the wrong button. I'm sorry. The busiest times is that when everybody else is off, you're at work. And that's the one anomaly about the field that's really different from any other field. And that goes with hotels as well. That's the one anomaly about this field that is different than the others is you can make good money, but you're going to be at work when everybody else is off.
Right. And that does frustrate some people. So you have to, like I said, you need to come in entry level and kind of work through it to make sure you're passionate about it. But you do work weekends. You do work holidays. I mean, we're busy Labor Day and 4th of July and Memorial Day. Most places are closed Thanksgiving. Most places are closed Christmas. But surrounding those holidays, we're typically busy. So it's hard to get like a whole week off during those times, but you can get a day or two. But, you're working weekend nights where people, your friends might be going out. So it is a challenge. It is a lifestyle that you have to choose in order, you do kind of give that up when you join the industry. I mean, it's not every weekend and it's not every holiday, but it's most. So, but for having almost no formal education to be able to make the kind of money that we make in this industry, personally, I think that's a small sacrifice. And if you're in, like you were, like in the server area, well, that's when the money is also. So it's not only you're making a small sacrifice to work on Friday and Saturday nights, but you're also making more money than on a Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, and for anybody that's here, anybody watching later, I can tell you, I made more money in my pocket doing front of the house restaurant work than I have done anything else, and it's not even close. If you look at per hour, the amount of money that was made was astronomically higher than anything else I've done. Now I've stepped away from it for the time being, but that's not to say I wouldn't go back because, like I said, once you do it, the money is too hard to let go of. And before I get to some of their questions, can you talk a little bit about if somebody wanted to get started in the restaurant industry just to work while they're in college? How are those skills transferable into other fields?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I talk about, all the time. is if you can work in the restaurant business, in the hospitality business, there is no business that it does not translate to, because you are groomed, almost forced to multitask.
Yep.
You have to multitask constantly. You have to communicate, over communicate, which is also very important in any business. You have to respect people. You have to give respect to get respect. You learn a hospitality mentality so that thought process goes with you, that you take care of people and they'll take care of you. There's almost, I mean, obviously you learn a lot about business, a lot about, like I opened up this conversation about how money flows. Some people might say, oh, well, this restaurant raised their prices recently, or, that salad is smaller than it was last week. Well, that's indicative of the, the commodities. That's not some owner or some manager trying to make more money. That's the misunderstanding. We're just forced to deal with the commodities and the economy that are before us. So all of those things teach you how to deal with aspects of the world and how it works and how it affects, profitability. And it prepares you for, like I said, just about anything.
Yeah, and I would say face-to-face sales, because I still think that is the most needed skill in America, that can obviously translate into anything. And being the face-to-face customer relations, that is really what so many of these companies are looking for. So somebody with that experience, with that on a resume, if you wanted to serve tables while you were in college, I'm telling you, that would be a great translator into the business world. But I do have some great questions here, and these are all ninth graders, except for like one or two. But this is a great one. This is from David Ford, and he asked, how did COVID-19 affect your restaurant?
Great question. Tremendously. We had to go to strictly pick up curbside. We had to lay off every employee,
including me,
including Greg. That was not my decision, by the way, but it was almost
industry
everybody's decision in the industry, because we were obviously not allowed to serve inside the restaurants for many, many months. So it impacted every employee in the industry, and it certainly impacted the restaurants, because we were, your curbside during COVID, although it was good, it's nothing compared to being open 100%. And if I remember correctly, we're talking about 25% of sales. So it affected us financially, 75% minimally.
Wow. And that's probably on the low end on a lot of restaurants. Some of it was in the 90s.
Right. And some had to close.
Yeah, permanently.
Yeah. Permanently. Yeah.
This is along the same lines. This is another great question. This is Garrett Bush, and he asked, how do you come up with the prices for your food items?
Well, that goes back to commodities. It goes back to how much you're paying for your food. And then you have a budget, which is, it's different for every restaurant. If you're selling steak, then your food cost budget might be 30 to 35. At Burgers and Blues, we're selling burgers and chicken. And so our food cost budget is more like 25%. So you basically take a burger and you find out how much it takes to make that burger, and then you take 25% of that cost out, and then you have a price.
Okay. So this is Christopher Rugley, and he asked, what inspired you to begin work with Burgers and Blues Barbecue?
Well, COVID had something to do with it. I was working at Biaggi's during COVID, and I was not particularly happy with the way Biaggi's handled COVID. So I'll leave it at that. So Stephen, Biaggi's is a corporately owned restaurant, whereas Steven Soller, who's the owner of Burgers and Blues,
Madison Central alumni.
Madison Central alumni.
Yep.
He owns Burgers and Blues. He's the sole owner. He's the creator. He had asked me to work for him prior, when he was going to open a restaurant in the Renaissance. But COVID hit and that stopped him from doing that. And so he was affected by that, by the virus in that way. So basically, he and I had already had discussions prior to COVID. And then basically during COVID, or right at the end of, I say the end of COVID, it's still not over. You're obviously still wearing a mask, and we wear masks too. I'm not today because I'm in this office by myself. But we got together and decided to not only get together, but to rebrand Burgers and Blues and expand it. We are presently still looking at a couple other locations. So we're not done.
Ooh.
So this is a good company to come to if you're looking, to grow.
Absolutely. This is from Cadence Mosley, and she asked, how do you ensure that the services provided by your team are up to date and consistent?
That's training. And that goes back to my passion about coaching. We like to always have a training coordinator, somebody that is an employee that is passionate about training and kind of make sure that they follow up and make sure that employees are being trained properly. And then it is up to the manager and general manager at the restaurants to make sure that they are signed off that they were trained properly, but also to continue to coach. Because I always tell people in the restaurant business, training is like your boot camp. You're not the best soldier you're ever going to be. You're not the best server you're ever going to be. And you're not the best cook you're ever going to be after 2 weeks of training. So it is our job to continue to coach and develop you minimally really forever, but minimally for the next couple of weeks I always put almost out to a month. After the first month, with constant supervision, you should be really close to your peak.
Yeah. This is a good one that I'm glad they're thinking about. This is RJ Jones, and he asked, if it's a busy day and you're short on staff, do you always pay your staff that's there overtime?
No, it's not really legal. Legally, you get paid overtime after 40 hours of work per week. So what we do is pitch in as a manager. If I'm short-staffed, I go and help so that not only the guests are getting taken care of, but the employees feel like they are not being overworked. You always do work more when you're short-staffed, and I'll be honest with you, every restaurant in the city is short-staffed right now.
Yeah, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It's
right.
Just the industry.
Right. So we are, if you're a server or if you're a tipped employee, you will make more money just because there's less of you. So you'll get more hours because there's less of you. So there is a financial reward to the employee for being short-staffed, but it's a short-term financial reward because we're not really able to provide the service to the guest when you're short-staffed. So it is a very short-term reward. But back to the question, legally, you can only pay people overtime after 40 hours.
Yeah, and that's something we talk about in my business law class. But along those same lines, and just some of our, these are all mainly ninth graders, and those watching later are going to be ninth grade. I think it's important to understand when they are in a restaurant and there is a server there, that person is not getting an hourly wage. They live 100% off of the tips that are given for good service. So even though that can be very high, why is it important to understand about the tipping of these employees and the tipping of tipping for good service and things like that?
Well, it's a great question, and it's something that unfortunately isn't being taught by parents through, whether it's verbal communication or actually, something that people see at restaurants. There is still, unfortunately, a lot of people that believe that servers are making enough money that they don't need to be tipped at a higher rate. And I'm here to tell you, I've been doing this a long, long time. And the server minimum wage is $2.13. So that barely, and sometimes doesn't even cover their taxes. So most servers do not get any check, zero check. Everything they make to pay their bills is from tips. So, and bad service, what a customer considers bad service isn't always the server's fault either. Unless that server is really just rude to you or just disappears and is not at your table, any other negative consequence of your experience probably has something to do with something else, whether it's, being short in the kitchen and the food coming out long, or the food being incorrect, or the drinks taking long, or the drinks being incorrect. Most servers are trying their best because they know that whatever you leave them is the only money they're making today. And the cook in the back is still making his money. The hostess in the front is still making her money, and the manager is still making his money. So it is vitally important to communicate and know that unless a server is downright rude or absent, you should tip them. And the minimum right now in the industry is 20%. And it's real easy because you just take your bill and you do 10% and double it. So if it's $100 check and you take 10% of that, it's $10, double it, it's 20. So on a $100 bill, you should minimally leave that person $20.
Yeah, and somebody that was in the industry as long as I was, I understand everybody can't afford to leave a whole bunch of money every time, but it's the fact that you make the effort to at least give as much as you can realistically for good service. Like, don't go in a restaurant and spend $300 and you ain't got but $5 to leave a tip.
Correct.
Things like that. So I mean, I'm more realistic than a lot of servers, but I also understand the gravity of the situation. Now, before we go, can you talk a little bit about Burgers and Blues and what all you guys, if you guys are looking for employees, the kind of people you're looking to hire, and the kind of opportunities that would be there for somebody that might want to work there in high school?
Right. Well, we do hire, 15 and above. We are actively looking for hostesses and bussers and food runners at both locations. We are located in Brandon on Government Street, that is downtown Brandon, right before the Circle, off of exit 56. And then we're on Main Street in Madison, closer to 51. But if you're coming from the interstate, it's exit 108, make a right, and just keep going right.
Across the street from all the churches and stuff.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes.
First Methodist Madison, First Baptist Madison, the old Madison Regional High School, all right there.
Right by the train tracks. We're literally, 15, 20 yards from the train tracks. So we are presently hiring at both locations because, like I said earlier, every restaurant is short-staffed at this point. We are looking for people at night, so that is good for students. We just ask that if you do come in and apply, that you do have an availability that you can provide that is pretty consistent, and that you could stay responsible to. Punctuality is something I haven't talked about, but punctuality in every aspect of life, whether it's going to school, being at practice for your team, and particularly going to work is very, very important. It's really sad, but if you show up to work every day on time, you're automatically at some manager's top of their list, because it is very inconsistent in the restaurant business that people are on time every day. So if you could be that person, you're already a leg up.
Yeah, and I've definitely tried to go to restaurants before first thing in the morning that did not have staff there yet and couldn't open, and it's pretty upsetting.
Yeah. Yeah, there's quite a few around town that are not staffed every day, and that actually some of them are closing specific days. And some, like I said, some of them have closed permanently. So we've been blessed. We are a Christian-based company. Stephen, the owner, is non-denominational, but very religious man. Like I said, I'm a devout Catholic, so we're very religious company. We don't tolerate a lot of profanity. We're closed on Sunday, so that's a blessing to everybody. So we're closed on Sundays, and we have very reasonable hours of work. We close at 9 during the week and 10 on Fridays and Saturdays. So it's very reasonable for the restaurant business.
Yeah, and I hope the folks over at Rosa Scott watching this, before you go to school, you got to go try out their breakfast. It is absolutely banging. That create your own omelet is a great idea, and that waffle, man, let me tell you, it'll do you right. And then and make sure you go check them out in downtown Brennan. But yeah, after school, you Titans and Jaguars and Mavericks that are watching down on that side of the county, make sure you go check them out and say hi. But we thank you so much. I know you're really busy over there, and it's always a pleasure. And I'll come by and see you soon, my man.
All right, Greg. Go Tigers.
Go Tigers.